The night was so quiet that Maria could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her chest. It should have been a night of joy, a night when a husband and wife gathered around their newborn children with laughter and gratitude, but instead it was a night filled with sorrow and fear. Maria sat on the edge of their old wooden bed, her body weak from childbirth. Beside her lay 4 tiny girls, wrapped in thin cloths, their cries blending into one another until it sounded like a song of desperation. She tried to hush them with her trembling hands, whispering words of comfort even though her own heart was breaking. David, her husband, stood by the door with a suitcase. His jaw was clenched, his eyes cold, his voice sharper than any knife. "I cannot stay here, Maria," he said without emotion. "You have given me 4 daughters. 4. What do you expect me to do with this? Who will carry my name? Who will stand as my son?" Maria's tears flowed freely. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. "David, they are your children. They carry your blood. They may not be sons, but they are yours. Please don't walk away from them. From me." Her voice broke into sobs. She wanted to reach out, to hold him back, to shake him until he remembered the vows they had spoken. But David's face was a stone mask. He stepped closer, his words like poison in her ears. "I will not waste my life feeding 4 girls. Do you know how people will laugh at me? A man with 4 daughters and no son? They will call me weak, cursed. I refuse to live in shame." The babies cried louder as if they could sense what was happening. Maria tried to gather them in her arms, rocking them gently. "They are blessings, David. Please look at them. Look at their tiny faces. They are innocent." But he looked away, his hands tightening on the suitcase handle. "You can call them blessings, but to me they are burdens. Do not look for me, Maria. From tonight you and these girls are on your own." The door slammed shut. The sound echoed in Maria's ears until her chest felt like it would burst. She fell to her knees, the babies pressed against her chest, tears pouring down her face. "God, why me?" she whispered. "What sin have I committed to deserve this?" The babies cried harder and she rocked them, whispering, "Don't worry, my angels. Your father may leave, but I will never abandon you." But as the night stretched on, doubt consumed her. How would she feed them? She had no money, no job, and no one to turn to. Her parents were gone, her relatives far away. The only person she trusted had walked out and left her to drown. The days that followed were harder than Maria could have ever imagined. She tied one baby to her back, carried another in her arms, and laid 2 in an old basket. She went from door to door, begging neighbours for food, for milk, for anything that could keep her children alive. Some pitied her and gave her scraps. Others shut their doors, whispering behind her back. 4 girls? What a curse, some women muttered. No wonder her husband ran away. Each word was like a knife in her heart, but Maria pressed on. She washed clothes for pennies. She scrubbed floors. She carried heavy loads at the market until her back ached and her hands blistered. Every night, she returned home exhausted. But the sight of her 4 little daughters sleeping peacefully gave her strength. One evening, after working all day, Maria sat by the flickering flame of a kerosene lamp. The babies slept beside her, their tiny breaths steady. She touched each of their faces, tears glistening in her tired eyes. "My precious daughters, the world may call you weak because you are girls, but I know you are strong. One day, you will rise above this poverty. One day, you will prove to the world and to the man who abandoned you that you are more powerful than he ever imagined." But just as hope flickered in her heart, danger crept into her life. The landlord came the next morning, banging on the door with anger in his eyes. "Maria," he shouted, "you owe 2 months' rent. If you cannot pay by tomorrow, you and those children will be thrown out." Maria's heart sank. She begged, she pleaded, but the landlord was firm. That night she sat awake, her daughters curled around her. She had no money, no help, and nowhere to go. She felt the darkness closing in. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered a promise. "My little queens, we will survive this. Even if I must beg on the streets, even if I must sleep under the open sky, I will never let you die." At that moment, thunder rumbled outside, shaking the small apartment. Maria hugged her children tighter, her heart pounding with both fear and determination. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know if she would find food, or if the landlord would drag her and her daughters into the street. But one thing was certain: she would fight with everything she had to keep her children alive. And as the storm raged outside, Maria whispered through her tears, "David, you may laugh now, but one day these girls will make the world know their names." The babies stirred in their sleep, and for the first time in days, Maria felt a spark of hope flicker in her heart. But hope is fragile, and the world outside was merciless. Tomorrow held another test, one that could break her completely, or shape the destiny of her 4 daughters, forever. Morning came with the landlord's angry footsteps pounding at the door. Maria's heart skipped as she clutched her babies closer. The man's voice roared through the small room. "Maria, I warned you yesterday. Where is my rent?" She opened the door slowly, her eyes swollen from a sleepless night. "Please, give me just one more week. I will find work. I will pay you. I beg you for the sake of my children." The landlord's eyes swept across the room, landing on the 4 crying babies. His face hardened. "I don't run a charity house. If you cannot pay, you leave." With a wave of his hand, he shouted for 2 young men to drag her things out. Maria fell to her knees, tears running down her cheeks. "Please don't do this. My babies are too small. Where will we go?" But her cries were drowned out by the sound of her belongings being thrown outside. A broken stool, her old cooking pot, the thin mattress where she gave birth, everything lay scattered in the mud. She gathered her babies in her arms and stepped out, her neighbours staring in silence. Some shook their heads, some whispered, but no one helped. The sun burned overhead, and the street became her home. She sat by the roadside, her children bundled in her arms, her stomach empty, her throat dry. The babies cried from hunger, their tiny voices breaking her spirit. She begged passers-by for help. Some gave coins, others ignored her, but most only stared with pity. Days turned into nights. Maria slept on cold cement, using her wrapper to shield her daughters from mosquitoes. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and sometimes she thought death would be easier. Yet each time her children whimpered, she forced herself to fight another day. One evening, as darkness fell, Maria sat by the marketplace, her daughters asleep beside her. Suddenly, a shadow loomed. A tall man in fine clothes approached, his eyes sharp, his smile strange. "Woman," he said, "I have watched you here for days. You suffer too much. If you give me one of your daughters, I will give you money. Enough to feed the rest." Maria froze. Her chest tightened. "What did you say?" The man leaned closer. "Think wisely. 1 child for a better life for you and the others. It is a fair trade." Her hands trembled as she pulled her daughters closer. Tears filled her eyes, but her voice shook with fire. "I will never sell my child, not for all the money in the world. Leave us!" The man's smile faded, his eyes cold. He hissed and walked away into the night. But Maria knew this was not the last she would see of him. That night she whispered to her babies, "People will try to use you. They will see your weakness and want to destroy you. But I swear to protect you, even if it costs me my life." As she spoke, thunder rolled across the sky, just as it did on the night their father abandoned them. Maria hugged her daughters tighter, her heart pounding. She did not know how, but deep inside, she felt something was coming. Something that would change their lives forever. The marketplace was almost empty when Maria laid her daughters down on an old sackcloth. The night wind was cold, and she covered them with her wrapper, shivering as she held them close. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but it was the baby's weak cries that tore her heart apart. she whispered. "Sleep, my angels. Tomorrow will be better." But her voice trembled because she did not know if tomorrow would bring hope or more pain. Suddenly, footsteps echoed through the night. She looked up. The same tall man in fine clothes stood before her again, his face hidden in the shadows. Maria's heart sank. He smiled, but there was no kindness in it. "I told you before, woman, you suffer too much. One child, and your misery ends." He knelt down, brushing a finger across the cheek of the nearest baby. Maria slapped his hand away, fear burning through her chest. "Don't touch my child," she hissed, pulling all four closer. The man's eyes darkened. "You think you can protect them forever? The streets are cruel. You have no roof, no food. Sooner or later, one of them will die in your arms. Why not choose now and save the others?" Maria's body shook. She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs felt weak. "I would rather die than give you my daughters," the man chuckled, standing tall. "Die then. But remember this, others are watching, and not all of them will ask for permission." He disappeared into the night, leaving Maria trembling. She clutched her children tighter, tears streaming down her face. She knew he meant every word. The next day proved his threat true. While Maria was begging near the bus station, she turned for just a moment to beg a woman for food. In that brief second, she heard one of her babies scream. A ragged man was running with her youngest in his arms. Maria's heart stopped. "My baby!" she screamed, dropping everything and chasing after him. Her legs pounded against the ground, her lungs burned, but her fear gave her strength. She screamed for help, but people only stared, too shocked to move. The man ducked into an alley, running fast. Maria stumbled, fell to her knees, but pushed herself up and kept going. Her baby's cries echoed in the distance, piercing her soul. And then, silence. Maria reached the dark alley, her chest heaving, her hands shaking. The man was gone. The baby was gone. "No!" she screamed, clawing at the walls, her voice breaking into the night. "Give me back my child!" She collapsed on the ground, her other daughters wailing behind her, their cries filling the air like sirens of grief. Her world spun. She had lost one of her babies. She did not know where. She did not know how to get her back, but one thing was certain. Her life had just turned into a battle, fiercer than she could ever imagine. And as she sat in the dirt, her face wet with tears, a terrible thought struck her heart like a knife. What if she never saw her daughter again? Maria staggered through the alley, her cries echoing off the cracked walls. Her arms shook as she clutched her remaining 3 daughters, their small faces wet with tears. One was gone, stolen from her arms like a piece of meat. She fell to the ground, her knees hitting the dirt. "God, why? Why my baby?" she wailed, her voice breaking the silence of the night. Some people gathered at the end of the alley, staring, whispering, but none came forward to help. Maria pressed her forehead to the ground, sobbing until her throat burned. But then, in the middle of her grief, she felt something. Rage. Fierce, burning rage. She stood shakily, clutching her babies tighter. "I swear I will find her. Whoever took my daughter will not hide forever." The following days were a blur of pain and desperation. Maria ran from police station to police station, begging them to help. But the officers only laughed at her story. "You cannot even feed yourself," one sneered, "and you expect us to waste time looking for your child? Children get lost every day in this city." Her heart cracked at their cruelty. She searched the streets on her own, showing strangers a torn piece of cloth from her baby's wrapper, begging for clues. But no one had answers. Each day without her daughter felt like poison eating through her veins. Then, one evening, as she begged in the marketplace, a woman with a kind face approached her. The woman wore a simple blue dress and carried a basket of food. She bent down and whispered, "I saw a man carrying a baby last night." He took her into the big, abandoned warehouse near the river. Maria's heart raced. She grabbed the woman's arm. "Are you sure?" The woman nodded, slipping bread into Maria's hands. "Be careful. That place is dangerous. People say it is where children are sold." Maria's body shook with fear, but determination burned in her eyes. That night, when darkness fell, she strapped her 3 daughters to her back and chest, and with trembling steps, she made her way to the warehouse. The place loomed over her, tall and broken, with shattered windows like watching eyes. She pushed the rusty door open and stepped inside. For the first time in weeks, Maria tasted warm bread. For the first time, her daughters slept on a soft surface. Tears ran down her cheeks as she whispered, "Thank you, Father." The priest placed a hand on her shoulder. "God does not abandon his children. You must stay here. We will protect you." But safety is an illusion. That night, when the church bell tolled, Maria woke to whispers outside the window. She peered through the curtain and froze. The same black car was parked nearby, its headlights off, men in suits standing around it like shadows. Her breath caught. They had found her. She shook the priest awake, panic in her eyes. "They're here! The men who want my children!" The priest looked through the window and his face darkened. "You must leave, Maria. Take the back door. Now." Maria grabbed her babies, her heart pounding as she ran through the narrow corridor. But as she pushed the back door open, she collided with someone. A tall stranger stood there, dressed in a long coat. His hand gripped her arm tightly. Maria's scream caught in her throat. She tried to pull away, clutching her daughters tighter. The stranger leaned close and whispered, "If you want your children to live, come with me." Right now. Her mind spun. Was this another trap? Or a way out? Behind her, she could already hear footsteps storming into the church. The men from the car were inside. Shouts echoed. The priest cried out. Maria looked at her daughters, then at the stranger whose grip was firm, but whose eyes held no cruelty, only urgency. She had seconds to decide. And as the church door burst open with the sound of boots, Maria's heart pounded with terror. If she went with the stranger, she might be walking into another danger. But if she stayed, she was certain she and her children would not live to see sunrise. Maria's breath came in short gasps as she stared at the tall stranger. His grip was firm, not cruel, but strong enough to stop her from running. The glow of the church lantern behind her threw his face into shadow. All she could see were his piercing eyes, urgent and sharp, watching her like a hawk. Her daughters whimpered softly against her chest and back, their cries almost drowned out by the chaos inside the church. Men's voices barked orders. Footsteps thundered against wooden floors. She could hear the priest shouting, then a loud thud as if he had been struck. Maria's heart twisted. The kind man who had sheltered her for only a day was already paying the price for helping her. The stranger leaned closer. His voice was low, hurried. "You have no time. Choose now. Stay and die, or come with me." Maria's lips trembled. "Why should I trust you? Who are you?" The man's eyes flicked to the side as one of the thugs appeared at the far end of the corridor, a gun glinting in his hand. The stranger gritted his teeth. "Later. I'll explain later. If you want your children to live, follow me." Before Maria could answer, the stranger pulled a small key from his pocket and unlocked a rusty door hidden in the wall. It swung open to reveal a narrow passage that smelled of damp earth. Without waiting, he guided her through, shutting it behind them just as shouts erupted. Maria stumbled in the darkness, her legs weak from exhaustion, but the stranger steadied her. "This tunnel leads out behind the church," he whispered. "Keep moving." They emerged into the cold night air, far behind the churchyard. The black car's headlights still glowed at the front, but the men had all gone inside. The stranger led her quickly down a narrow path toward the forest. For a long time, only the sound of crickets and her daughter's soft cries filled the silence. Maria's heart beat painfully against her ribs. Who was this man? Was she safe? Or had she just stepped into a deeper trap? Finally, they reached a clearing where an old truck was parked. The stranger opened the door, gesturing for her to climb in. Maria hesitated, clutching her babies tighter. "Where are you taking me?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The man sighed. You don't have a choice, woman. Those men won't stop until they have your daughters. I know who they are. I know what they want. His eyes softened just slightly. If I wanted to harm you, I would have left you inside, but I didn't. Maria's lips quivered. She looked at her girls, their tiny faces pale, their cries weak from hunger. She thought of the priest lying injured, maybe dying because of her. And she thought of the black car, of the men's threats, of her stolen child locked in a cage. She had no strength left to fight alone. Slowly she climbed into the truck. The stranger closed the door and walked around to the driver's side. The engine roared to life and they drove into the night. For a long time, Maria said nothing, only held her babies close. Finally, she whispered, "Tell me who you are." The man glanced at her from the corner of his eye. "My name is Kunle. I work with the police, but not the kind you saw tonight. Those men, they are part of a powerful network. Some officers work for them. That's why they laughed at you when you reported your stolen child." Maria's eyes widened, her stomach knotted. "So you're saying, even the police?" Kunle nodded grimly. "Yes, some of them. This thing is bigger than you can imagine. They traffic children. They sell them. They even kill those they cannot sell. You stumbled into their hands, and now they see your 4 daughters as prizes." Maria's body shook. She pressed her face against her babies' heads, hot tears spilling down her cheeks. "Why? They are just children, innocent babies." Kunle's voice was low. "Because innocence sells, because evil does not care about innocence." He gripped the wheel tightly, his knuckles white. Maria sobbed quietly, her heart torn. She wanted to scream, to tear the night apart with her pain, but she forced herself to stay quiet. Every tear felt like fire on her face. Hours later, the truck pulled up near an old compound hidden deep in the forest. Kunle stepped out and unlocked the gate. "You will be safe here for now," he said. Maria followed, clutching her daughters, her eyes darting nervously around the compound. Inside was a small room with mats on the floor and a wooden table with bread and water. To her, it looked like paradise compared to the cold street. She set her babies down, feeding them slowly. As she watched them finally fall asleep, her heart softened for the first time in days, but fear still clung to her chest. Kunle stood at the doorway, his figure outlined by the moonlight. His voice was serious. "Maria, you must understand. Saving your daughters will not be easy. The men chasing you are connected to powerful people, but I will help you. I made a vow years ago when I lost my own child to them. I will never rest until I bring their empire down." Maria gasped. She turned to him, her tears shimmering. "Your child?" Kunle's jaw tightened. He looked away. "My daughter. She was taken. I never found her. Since that day I've fought in the shadows. And tonight when I saw you with your 4 little girls, I knew. I could not let history repeat itself." Maria's throat closed with emotion. She wanted to believe him, but pain had made her wary of every soul. Yet something in his voice, in the broken edge of his confession, touched her heart. Before she could answer, the sound of engines shattered the night. Maria froze. Her daughters stirred, whimpering in their sleep. Kunle's eyes snapped toward the gate. Headlights flashed in the distance, approaching fast. Maria's chest tightened. "They found us?" Kunle's face darkened. He pulled a pistol from under his coat. "Stay inside. Don't move." But Maria knew the truth deep inside her trembling heart. She had walked straight into another war. And this time, she feared even Kunle's strength would not be enough to save them. The growl of engines cut through the still night. Maria pressed her daughters to her chest, her heart pounding like a drum in her ears. The dim lamp inside Kunle's compound flickered, casting long, fearful shadows across the walls. Kunle stood at the doorway, his pistol gripped tight, his jaw clenched. "They're here," he said in a low, steady voice. "Stay quiet. No matter what happens, don't open this door unless I return." Maria's hands trembled as she pulled her daughters close. The girls whimpered softly, sensing her fear. She kissed their tiny foreheads, whispering, "Hush, my angels. Mama will not let anyone take you." But deep inside, terror gnawed at her. Headlights cut across the compound, bright and blinding. The sound of car doors slamming shut followed. Voices, low, hard, and commanding, echoed into the night. Maria's pulse raced. Through a crack in the wooden wall she saw them, men in black suits, their faces shadowed, their guns gleaming under the moonlight. The same network. The same predators who wanted her daughters. Kunle stepped out, his figure tall and unyielding in the darkness. "Leave now," he shouted. "You will not touch them." The men laughed coldly. One stepped forward, his voice dripping with cruelty. "Kunle, you think you can play hero forever? Hand over the woman and her girls. You know what happens if you refuse." Maria's blood ran cold. Her heart squeezed painfully. She could barely breathe as she clutched her children tighter. Kunle raised his pistol. "Over my dead body." The air grew tense, every sound magnified. The crickets hushed, the night itself seemed to hold its breath. And then, gunfire exploded. Maria screamed, ducking to the floor as bullets shattered the wooden walls. Her daughters wailed in terror, their cries piercing the chaos. She threw herself over them, her body a shield, her tears burning hot. Outside, Kunle fired back, his shouts mixing with the crack of guns. Maria could hear the men closing in, boots pounding against the ground. The smell of smoke filled the air. A bottle crashed through the window, fire spilling across the floor. "No, no!" Maria sobbed, pulling her daughters away from the spreading flames. The heat grew, smoke clawing at her lungs. Her eyes stung, her throat burned, but she kept moving, clutching all 4 girls. The roof groaned, the fire spreading fast. Maria's chest tightened with panic. If she stayed, they would all burn. If she ran outside, the men would take her children. She was trapped. Suddenly, Kunle stumbled through the door, blood soaking his sleeve. His face was pale, his voice urgent. "Maria, take them and run through the back fence. There's a path to the river. Don't stop. Go." Tears blurred her vision. "What about you?" He shook his head. "I'll hold them off. I won't let them take your daughters. Go." Her heart tore in two. She wanted to refuse, to stay, but the fire roared louder, bullets shattered more wood, and her daughters screamed in her arms. With a sob, she obeyed. She slipped through the back, clutching her girls, her body shaking violently. She ran barefoot across the dirt, every step cutting her feet, every breath burning her lungs. Behind her, the compound blazed, flames licking the sky. Kunle's gunshots echoed until they suddenly stopped. Maria froze mid-step, her chest seizing. Silence followed. A silence that chilled her to the bone. She wanted to turn back. She wanted to scream his name, but her daughter's cries reminded her she could not stop. She had to keep moving. She staggered through the forest path, branches clawing at her skin, the river's faint rush guiding her forward. Her arms ached, her body felt broken, but she pressed on. Finally, she reached the riverbank. Moonlight shimmered on the water. She collapsed to her knees, clutching her daughters to her chest, sobbing. But then, she heard voices, not behind her, across the river. Her head shot up, fear surging anew. Torches glowed in the darkness on the opposite shore. Figures moved, more men, more of them. Maria's blood turned to ice. The network was everywhere. She rocked her daughters desperately, her tears falling into their tiny hair. "What do I do? God, what do I do?" And then she heard it, the snap of a branch behind her. Slowly she turned. Standing at the edge of the trees was a figure. His face caught in the moonlight. Her breath stopped. It was David, her husband, the man who had abandoned her and their children. His eyes locked on hers, his face unreadable. He stepped forward slowly, his voice low, cutting through the night. "Maria, give me the children." Maria froze on the riverbank, her breath caught in her throat. The man standing before her was no ghost, no dream. It was David, her husband, the man who had spat on her love and abandoned her with 4 tiny babies. Her arms tightened around her daughters. They whimpered softly, their eyes fluttering open at the sound of his voice. David's shadow stretched across the ground, long and threatening in the moonlight. "Maria," he said slowly, stepping closer. His eyes, once warm years ago, now gleamed cold. "Give me the children." Maria's knees weakened. For a moment her heart wanted to believe he had come to help, that fate had brought him back to save them. But something in his tone, calm, commanding, empty of tenderness, sent chills through her. She shook her head fiercely, tears stinging her eyes. "No, David, these are your daughters. You left us. You don't have the right to touch them." David's jaw clenched. He stepped closer, his shoes crunching on the pebbles. "You don't understand. This is bigger than you. Those men after you? I know them. I've worked with them." Maria gasped, her heart slamming against her ribs. "What are you saying?" David's eyes flickered with shame but hardened again. "I joined them after I left. They gave me money. They promised me power. I thought I was escaping poverty, escaping the shame of 4 daughters." He looked at the children, his voice tightening. "But now they want them, and if I don't deliver, I'm finished." Maria's whole body shook. She pulled her daughters closer, her voice breaking. "David, they are your blood. How can you even think of giving them to monsters?" His face twisted, torn between guilt and greed. "Maria, don't make this harder. Hand them over and you can walk away. Alive." Her tears streamed. "Alive? Without my children, I am already dead." Before David could answer, movement stirred across the river. The men with torches were getting closer, their voices carrying through the air. Behind Maria, the forest crackled with more footsteps. They were surrounded. Maria's mind raced. She could not fight. She could not run. She was trapped between the river, the forest, and the man who had once vowed to protect her. David's voice lowered. "Maria, don't be foolish. You cannot protect them. Hand them to me, and I will convince them to spare your life." She shook her head violently, her sobs choking her. "Never! I would rather drown in this river with them than give them to you." David's face darkened. His voice rose. "You think you can fight the world with nothing? You think your tears can stop men who kill without blinking? Wake up, Maria. You are nothing." The words cut her like knives, reopening every wound from the night he abandoned her. But this time, Maria's tears turned to fire. She stood tall, clutching her daughters, her voice steady. "Maybe I am nothing, but these girls are everything. And one day, they will be greater than you, greater than all of you. I will not let you take them." David's eyes narrowed. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy as stone. Then, slowly, he reached inside his coat and pulled out a pistol. Maria's breath stopped. Her daughters whimpered louder, sensing the danger. The torches from across the river glowed brighter. The men were almost at the shore. From behind her, more footsteps rustled, the rest of the network closing in. David pointed the gun at her, his hand trembling. "Don't force me, Maria." Her knees shook, but she did not move. She pressed her daughters closer, her tears falling freely. Her voice cracked, but did not break. "If you want them, you will have to kill me first." The night grew unbearably tense. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. And then, a gunshot shattered the silence. David's body jerked. His pistol clattered to the ground. His eyes widened in shock as blood spread across his shirt. Maria gasped, clutching her children tighter as David stumbled backward, collapsing onto the pebbles. From the forest behind her, a figure stepped out, his face shadowed but his gun still smoking. Maria's heart pounded wildly. She could not see clearly, but she knew it wasn't one of the traffickers. The figure stepped closer, and in the faint moonlight, she saw him. Kunle, bloodied, limping, but alive. Her lips parted in disbelief. She had thought he was dead. She had thought the fire had consumed him. But here he was, standing like a ghost, his eyes burning with rage. Maria's tears fell faster as relief and shock battled inside her chest. But before she could speak, Kunle raised his hand sharply. "Maria, don't move," he warned. His eyes darted to the river where the torches now blazed brighter, voices shouting as the men crossed the water. The traffickers were seconds away. Kunle's voice dropped, fierce and urgent. "They're coming, and this time, there may be no escape." David lay on the cold riverbank, his shirt soaked in blood, his pistol lying useless beside him. His breaths came in shallow gasps, each one weaker than the last. The sound of gunfire and shouts grew nearer, but his eyes stayed fixed on Maria and the 4 daughters he had once rejected. Maria stood frozen, her arms clutching her girls, torn between fear and disbelief. She wanted to hate him, to scream at him for everything he had done, but seeing him broken and dying stirred something deeper, a pain she could not name. "Maria," David croaked, his voice barely a whisper. His eyes glistened with tears, his hand trembling as he reached toward her. "I was wrong." Maria's breath caught. She dared not step closer, but her ears strained to hear his words. "I thought they were curses," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I thought I needed sons to be a man, but now I'm seeing them, hearing their cries." His lips trembled. "They are beautiful. I was blind." Tears streamed down Maria's cheeks, hot and unrelenting. Her daughters whimpered softly in her arms, their tiny faces innocent and unaware of the war raging around them. David's chest rose and fell painfully. "Forgive me. I should have never left you. I should have stayed." His eyes darted to Kunle, then back to Maria. "Don't let them take them. Promise me they will live." Maria's heart broke into pieces. For years she had carried hatred toward him, but in this fragile moment, all she saw was a broken man realizing his mistakes too late. She knelt, placing her daughters gently beside her, and grasped his cold hand. "I forgive you," she whispered through tears. "But your daughters, they will live, even if it costs me everything." A faint smile flickered across David's face, a single tear rolling down his cheek. He tried to speak, but no words came. His eyes glazed over, his hand falling limp in hers. Maria sobbed, pressing her forehead against his chest. The man who had abandoned them had finally returned, but only to die at their feet. Kunle's voice cut sharply through the grief. "Maria, we must move." She looked up through blurred eyes. The traffickers were crossing the river fast now, their torches bright, their guns gleaming. The sound of boots on water grew louder, closer. Kunle grabbed Maria's arm, pulling her to her feet. His face was pale, sweat dripping down his temple, but his eyes burned with urgency. "Take the children, run toward the forest, I'll cover you." Maria shook her head violently, her voice breaking. "You're wounded. You can't fight them all." "I don't have to fight them all," Kunle said through clenched teeth. "I just have to buy you enough time. Go." The men's shouts echoed across the river, their voices fierce and cruel. The first few were already stepping onto the shore. Maria's body shook with terror. She knew Kunle could not hold them forever. She scooped up her daughters, her tears falling onto their small heads. Her feet moved, weak but desperate, carrying her into the trees. Branches scratched her skin, the ground tore her feet, but she didn't stop. She ran until her lungs burned, her sobs choking her. Behind her, the sharp crack of gunfire filled the night. She heard Kunle shouting, then silence, then more shots. She pressed her daughters to her chest, whispering, "Don't cry, my queens. Don't cry. Mama is here." The forest grew darker, thicker. The sound of the river faded, replaced by the pounding of her heartbeat. She stumbled but forced herself up again, her will stronger than her pain. Finally, she reached a small clearing, her legs giving out beneath her. She collapsed onto the ground, her daughters wailing softly beside her. Her chest heaved as she listened. The night was quiet, too quiet. Then, faintly, she heard it. Footsteps. Not from behind, but ahead. Her body stiffened. Slowly, she lifted her head, her eyes wide. From the shadows of the trees, a man stepped forward. Not one of the traffickers, not Kunle. Someone else. His clothes were fine, his smile thin, his presence chilling. He clapped slowly, mockingly, as he looked down at her and the 4 children. "Well done, Maria," he said smoothly. "You survived longer than I expected." Maria's breath stopped. "Who are you?" The man tilted his head, his eyes glinting in the moonlight. "The one they all answer to. The one who truly owns your fate." Her blood ran cold. She pulled her daughters close, her tears trembling on her cheeks, and then his smile widened. "You have fought hard to keep them, but the real game is only beginning." Maria stared at the man who had revealed himself as the mastermind. His words had cut her like a knife, and for a moment, it felt as though all her battles had been in vain. She clutched her daughters, her body trembling, but deep within her heart something had changed. She was no longer the helpless woman begging for crumbs on the street. She was a mother who had fought fire, betrayal, and death itself. She would not bow. The man smirked. "You are stubborn, Maria, but stubbornness cannot protect you forever." Before he could step closer, a voice thundered from behind. Police trucks roared into the clearing, lights flashing, sirens blaring. Armed officers swarmed the forest, surrounding the man and his guards. The network's empire, at last, was collapsing. Kunle had not died in vain. His sacrifice had bought time for backup to arrive. Maria sobbed with relief, hugging her daughters tighter as the mastermind was dragged away in chains. She whispered, "We are free, my queens." At last, we are free. The years that followed were not easy, but they were filled with resilience. Maria worked day and night, raising her 4 daughters with love and courage. She washed clothes, cooked food to sell at the market, and later, with the help of kind strangers, she started a small business. Her daughters grew watching her sacrifice, her strength, her unbroken spirit. They never forgot the nights on the street. They never forgot the fire, the fear, the hunger. And because they remembered, they worked harder than anyone else. Chidinma, the eldest, grew into a brilliant lawyer, her voice fierce in the courtroom, fighting for women and children who had no one to protect them. Amaka II built a business empire from the ground up, turning small savings into chains of successful companies. Ngozi III became a doctor, saving lives the way her mother had once saved theirs. And Ada the youngest found her gift in technology, creating innovations that shook the world. Together, the Quadruplet girls rose higher than anyone had believed possible. Newspapers called them the 4 Crowns. They became billionaires, not just in money, but in impact. Their names travelled across continents, and at the centre of it all was Maria, their mother. On the day they launched their global foundation, a charity that built schools, hospitals, and homes for abandoned children, the world gathered to hear their story. Cameras flashed, reporters leaned forward, but all eyes turned to the stage where Maria, now older but still radiant with dignity, stood beside her daughters. Her eyes welled with tears as she spoke into the microphone. Her voice, though shaky, carried the weight of her journey. "Years ago, I was left on the street with 4 little girls. People called them a curse. Their father abandoned us. We begged for food. We slept in the cold. We faced death again and again. But I never gave up on them. And today the world sees what I saw from the beginning. Not curses, but crowns. My daughters are proof that no one is born worthless. No one is born a mistake. With love, faith, and hard work, even the abandoned can rise." The crowd erupted in applause. Tears rolled down Maria's cheeks as her daughters embraced her on stage. Cameras captured the image, a mother surrounded by the 4 daughters she had once carried on her back through hunger and pain, now billionaires standing proudly beside her. In the front row, some wept openly. Others whispered to their children, "Look at them. Look at what love can do." As the applause thundered, Maria looked up to the heavens. She thought of Cunla, of the priest who had sheltered her, of the sacrifices made along the way. She even thought of David, the man who had abandoned them, but in the end found regret. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "We made it." Her daughters, their voices strong and united, stepped to the microphones together. Chidinma said, "We are no longer the children left to die on the streets. We are women who will build a world where no child is abandoned." Amakar added, "We are proof that pain can become power." Ngozi's voice shook with emotion. "We are daughters who turn scars into strength," and Ada finished softly. "We are our mothers' crowns." The hall erupted again, the sound of clapping, cheering, and tears blending into one. Maria closed her eyes, her heart full, her soul at peace. The journey had been long, bitter, and cruel, but it had ended in triumph. Her daughters were no longer the babies she had once rocked under leaking roofs, or the little girls she shielded from fire and hunger. They were queens. They were billionaires. They were her victory. And in that moment the world finally understood. The woman who had once been abandoned was never truly alone. She had carried 4 miracles, and through them she had rewritten destiny.